Coming to you from the sewers under a town in Maine.
The horror.
It's the little podcast of horrors with James, Christina, and Chris.
Why, hello there.
Hello.
Come in.
Hey there. What's up? It's Little Podcast of Horrors Times. You know what that means. This means to snuggle in or buckle up or whatever the hell you're doing while you're listening to this. And-
Ouch. Wow, wow.
Wait, I hope they're not doing that while they're listening to this. I mean, if
That'd
you
be
are,
really morbid.
if you are, okay, no judgment here.
Everybody's got their kinks, Chris.
Yeah, do it.
And
Get
some
it!
people's kinks are us.
I believe that.
I'm a kink, you're a kink.
Well, welcome to Little Podcast of Horrors. As always, I'm Chris.
I'm Christina.
Yeah, I'm James.
And today we have a very
A
special
hostage.
guest.
A guest.
Whatever. Guest hostage. I don't know. Pain in the butt. I mean, for me, because our special guest isn't just anybody. Our special guest is my baby sister. Say hello, Courtney.
Hello.
And
Lovely
you
to
might
be
be
here.
wondering why we're just bringing on everybody's baby sister and doing nepotism and all that kind of stuff. Well, Courtney is a Ghostbuster.
Yeah, I guess that's what you'd call me.
And so we're gonna learn
I don't
about
know.
her.
I don't know if that's what
about
I
how
call
busting
you.
Makes her feel good.
You don't have a proton pack. You're not busting them. You're just more like busted into where they
Let
are
me have this,
and
Chris.
like being like, hey, I know you're here. Say something. Like, God damn, every one of these fuckers come in here and they want me to speak on this thing. Hi, get out of there. So,
That's
She's
definitely not what I do.
okay, fine.
Paranormal investigator.
I would say
Yes, thank you.
she's a
Okay.
paranormal investigator. She's a lot. I mean, like my
Proton pack
sister is.
optional.
My sister's more of the adventurous type than I am. I'm old and boring. I like to do podcasts and talk about ghosts, whereas she's like, let's go find them. Let's go barging in. And I would be the one being like, I'm too scared. She'd be like,
You'd
"Man."
enjoy yourself if you just
She's been trying to talk
keep
me.
come with me.
She's trying to get me to go with her. And if I could afford it, I will.
Should.
I want to.
Mm.
It's just money and time, but yes. So today we're going to be more or less just conversating with my sister about her adventures into the paranormal. Because like me, she comes from the same background. We've shared. I in one of our episodes, I talked about our experiences, which I think is kind of what set you on your path to all of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I'd say. You mean Ted Bird?
Yeah, on Ted Burn.
Yeah.
With all the weird stuff that happened there.
Yeah.
And can we remind people what Ted Burn is? So if they haven't listened to the episode, sorry, Courtney, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
She does it a lot, but we love it actually. Like it's part of her. It's
I do interrupt a lot.
yeah, and she likes like, I'm sorry, I love to interrupt. And we're like, interrupt, I don't care. Ted Burn was the house that Courtney and I didn't grow up in it. I was a teenager, but Courtney grew up. Well, she spent a good early beginning of her life there. And
Mhm.
it was a place where she and I experienced a lot of strange shit. And then you went back there as an adult.
I did.
Yeah.
That was just a couple years ago. I had looked it up on a listing on realtor.com and it was for sale or for rent. I can't remember. And I reached out to the realtor and I was honest with her that our family had a history there. And I took a walk around. They've remodeled it a lot and they've changed a lot. So but yeah, I went back and it was eerie to say the least.
Well, you
So
said
when you went back to do your busting, were you wearing the like 80s era Ghostbusters jumpsuit, or was it more like the mid 2000s Kevin Feige era Ghostbusters uniform?
No, I was wearing a shirt that said "Do MILFs not drugs."
well, you
I'm
said
kidding. I'm so kidding. I wore.
Nailed it.
I'm totally kidding. No, that's not what. No,
I wanted to
no,
believe that.
just basic. Sorry.
James jokes, but I actually have worn I have a Ghostbusters jumpsuit. And I went to, yeah, we both do. And I went to the Crescent Hotel when I was a wedding photographer, and I took the jumpsuit with me and I put it on in my room, and I was all like pointing at like the insignia, like they're watching me, like, you better not mess with me. You see this? Ghostbuster. But you said that some things happened even when you went back.
Yeah, I went into, I believe, your old room, and I sat on the floor. Can't remember everything that happened. It wasn't not a lot, but I felt something tug my hair, and it was prominent enough that my head jerked back. And she had told me prior to her leaving me alone for a little bit, she said that around 20 families had lived in the house since we left.
Gosh.
And that's a lot when you think about it in retrospect. Was 94, Chris, that we left? 93?
Let's see. Yeah, it was summer of 94.
Yeah, 94, because I was 3. But around 20 families had lived in it. They can't keep it occupied.
At some point, I mean, I guess they stopped doing this, but there was a time where I guess past residents could leave comments, and Courtney like pulled it up and she was like, holy God, Chris, look at this. And one of the top comments, what was it? It was like, this place is haunted as shit. Like,
yeah, I said it's haunted as shit.
Yeah. Like, oh my God.
They should just work that into the sales pitch and then get the right people living there.
Well, the other thing is that I asked her if, and I realized this later after looking into it, that Arkansas is not a state that requires real estate agents to let you know that paranormal activity goes on in a house. There are states that it's required if murders or paranormal activity. Yeah, I think Ohio is one. I believe is one that, or Indiana, Ohio or Indiana. I don't know why those two, but yeah, there's some states that requires you to let people know.
I feel like in Ohio things would be so boring that they probably have that in there, so just so you will buy the house. It's like, my life
I'm
is
probably
so dull.
wrong. I don't know why Ohio's popping.
This place is haunted as shit. I need some excitement. Let's get this house.
I want to hear the debate in Congress of how that law was passed.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Interesting.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah, but Courtney's been like all like. So where all have you gone exactly as far as like major haunted locations?
Oh gosh. Obviously you brought up one. Crescent Hotel was one of my most prominent experiences I think I've ever had. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Waverly Hill Sanatorium, all over the country, mostly the eastern side, but I've been to the Roosevelt Hotel. I've stayed there. Went to the Marilyn Monroe Suite. Nothing happened there, but I mean, all over the place. I've got a list.
Can we talk about your experience at the Crescent Hotel? And for those who don't know, that is located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas.
Yeah, about 12 years ago. Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. 12 years ago, I went with a friend of mine, and we had a EVP session going. And so we were recording, just trying to catch anything we could. And we were on the staircase, and I can share it with you guys later, but you can hear a man tell me not to turn around. He says, don't turn around.
We're on the third floor? Probably the fourth.
Ew, that give me chills.
Well, then after that, she was telling me a story about the time she had been there, and she was asking, she kind of said, this and this and this, and you hear a man go, like a really deep male voice. And there was nobody there. It was off season. There were not a lot of guests in the hotel, and I can't explain it.
Wow.
I can't explain it. And then I have a photo out to find it. I don't know if I have it, but you see a man leaning around a corner looking at us down the hallway.
So, Courtney, you're also pretty sensitive, right? Like to energy and stuff like that. Did you feel anything like energetically?
Yeah. With me, it's I see color changes in the room, or like, for some reason lighting changes, and then my smell. So there's something, it's not so much my hearing, it's sight, like I said, light. And then with that, it just, I could physically feel like something was following behind us. It's, how like when somebody's looking at you and like your eyes are closed, it's like that.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
I'm
That's how
sorry.
it felt.
Whenever Christina was like energetically, I just in my head saw the like this ghost just being like, this bitch can sensitive. Check this out. Woo! Just super energetic ghost.
So I'm sorry, I'm into like all the clear senses and all that, right? So you said that you can kind of like pick up a smell,
Mhm.
like a sense of smell. So that's clair aliens.
Mhm.
And you're like the first person I've probably met that has that ability. So that's pretty cool. So
I didn't know that was weird. I didn't know that was rare.
well, I don't know a lot of psychics though. So that's, to be fair, I don't, but
I wonder
that's
too,
pretty
like
cool.
with our connection, with like going back to Tedburn, because that was something that was a big thing that happened was
Mhm.
smell, not
Yep.
psychically, but like I talked about it in that episode, and where my father would go off to do a gig, and it would just be me and Courtney and her mom hanging out, and the prominent smell of cigarette smoke would just
Mhm.
permeate, but it only would stay in the living room. And it would get to the point you could see it. It was like,
Yeah.
like it got misty. And then later on, we found it in the back den as well. But it was like a wall. Like it would not cross the threshold into the kitchen, and it would stop right at the beginning of the hallway that led to the bedrooms. And that was also just bizarre.
Well, another thing that happened in that house was when I don't know if Chris, if you were there or not. I don't think you were. But I was sitting in the floor in the living room playing, and I heard what sounded like crashing in the kitchen. And I got up, and there is a man standing at the sink, and he's like tall and slender, and his hair was slicked back, and he had super thick glasses. I called him the evil Mr. Rogers, what I called him. And he was throwing our dishes, throwing them. And he looked down at me,
Rude.
and I ran to my mom's room, and she was making the bed. And I said, "There's a man in the kitchen." And she went running in there, and the dishes were intact. But I know, even at that little, I saw pieces of, something. I don't know.
Mhm.
I remember you telling me about that. I wasn't there. It was just you and your mom.
Well, I
So-
told her
so
about that years
between-
later.
Between this and the Crescent Hotel, I'm getting the vibe that you have a trend of being creeped on by male ghosts.
Well, I am gay, so I'm not surprised. Maybe it's a
So,
thing.
so tell us for those in our audience who don't know, tell us about EVP and what that means. I presume it's executive vice president. Would that be the second command of your Ghostbusters unit?
What? We got to talk later, James. That's not.
Electronic voice phenomenon. So basically, you just turn on your audio recorder, and there's just something energetically that goes on. There's a sensitivity in the equipment where it can pick up audio that like your ears can't pick up. And I do a lot of that, and I have other equipment that we take with us. We have a whole backpack of stuff. We have sensory light up balls that we turn on that even just the lightest touch, it'll set it off.
I want sensory light up balls.
They're really cool.
Do you find at like some of the places you go to, like the spirits there will react more to certain types of tools you have? Like some like to touch, or some like the EVP more, or is that a thing?
I mean, it is a thing, but I think the one thing I try to teach anybody that comes along with this that's never been is that it's not a circus. They're not your monkeys. Don't go in there and expect them to, bang on this whole knock 3 times on the ceiling if you want me kind of bullshit. And it's like, no, don't do that. That's not respectful. These were human beings at one point, possibly.
Sure.
I mean, it could be something else, but sometimes I haven't had a lot of interactions with my sensory stuff yet.
Okay.
Most of mine is my K2 meter, which just it basically the electro frequency in the air, it measures that. That's the one that I've had the most, and then my spirit box that I take with me.
K2 meter. I know what that is. That's the one Egon uses. It has little antennas that come up when it detects a ghost, right?
Basically, I wish mine looked like that, but no, it just lights up, just depending on how extreme the energy shift is. But yeah, that's the one. That K2 is the one I've had the most out of.
So
And I use that in yes or no.
And the thing is, whenever she goes on one of these hunts, as soon as she gets back, she comes to my house and she tells me she does. And she comes back and she'll be like, the shit that just happened to me, let me tell you something. And like, I can't sleep at night afterwards because she's just like, was it Waverly? Which was it the Waverly Hills where you saw the figures and it was about the lights, or which one was that?
That was West Virginia Penitentiary.
Yeah, tell us about that. That one was.
That's the most haunted place I've ever been. I've been twice.
The stories you told me, like, oh my God, that
if you want to
freaked me
go
out.
and you want to have an actual full-blown experience from the start of the time that you get there to the end of the time that you're walking out, that's the place to go. That was a prison where Charles Manson's mother actually was in prison there, and he wanted to be transferred there, and he was denied. I was in and I'll tell the one you're talking about, Chris, but I was in a room where they dealt with prisoners that had more psychological issues. Mm-hmm. And I had my spirit box going, and he said, "Am I dead?" And I said, "Yes, honey, I'm sorry, you are." And this guy walks through, like, just not a ghost, not casual ghost, just walking past me. A dude walks past me, and he goes, "Who is he?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "He's just here, doing all this with us. We're not friends. I don't know him." And then he said, "I want to see my daughter," or something like that. Something about his daughter, granddaughter, maybe granddaughter. And I said, "Well, you go find her." And he said, "I can't." And then he proceeded to say he wanted to go to heaven. And then he said he couldn't. And then I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Satan." And no matter what you religiously believe, something darker was telling him he couldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And that pissed me off, because you don't have a right to tell anybody what they can and can't do. And I said, whoever you are, you don't have that power here. And if any of you want to leave, you can. That person has no power over you. And I shit you not, the window off to our right starts rattling profusely. The whole window starts to shake. There's bars over the windows. And then it just stopped. And my group that was with me was crying and emotional. And it's like the whole room just lifted. And we actually did a prayer in the middle of the room.
So Ghostbuster and Exorcist on the resume.
I think my thing is what freaks people out is that I'll go into these locations and like, don't talk. You don't know what that is. I've always said, if you're going to go and you're going to paranormal investigate, the one thing you need to remember is that they do not have any consent or permission to attach themselves to you. If you tell them not to, if you tell them to F off, whatever, do it. And that's what I've always told people to do. I'm like, don't walk on eggshells. Just be yourself and stand your ground. And that's what we did. What Chris is talking about is the area out.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the freakiest thing. And you guys can look it up later and see what I'm talking about. I can send you pictures. But there's this giant ground where they would go out during the day to get sunlight and, whatever. And up around the wall, we were out. It was about 4:30 in the morning. We were just about to leave. And all of a sudden, these like slender men start appearing around the wall. I mean, I'm talking multiplying. All three of us see it. And they're digging. And they're doing this. And I said, "Okay, am I hallucinating?" And my mom said, "Unless we're all three hallucinating at the exact same freaking time, I see it too." And I said something about, I jokingly said, "Why don't we just go down the stairs and just go to the center of the lot here and see what we can see?" And as soon as I say that, they stop and they turn and start walking towards us. And I took off like I was in the NFL. I left everybody behind. I went into the prison and told the tour guide about it. And I said, "Okay, so this is what I just saw. What does that mean?" And she said, "That's odd. I'm going to write that down." And she starts writing it down. And she said, "Well, I think what you saw was back in the day, when prisoners would die, they would bury them around that area. And whenever they built that wall, they had to dig. So the prisoners were forced to go out and dig up former prisoners." That's what we were saying.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a residual haunting that we were saying. But then I was like, it can't be residual because they intelligently turned and started walking towards us.
Anybody that's wondering,
the thing about Slenderman, which is a topic I do happen to know a little bit about. The thing about Slenderman is most of the time they'll just wander around and like take blocks from your buildings. But as long as you don't look at them directly, nothing will happen. If you do look at them directly, they'll come at you, but otherwise they're just going to take blocks of grass or blocks out of your house. That's what I learned from Minecraft.
Anybody's wondering what residual haunt, it just basically means that it's more or less that it's like a replay. It's like history.
Like a recording.
It's a recording. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, there will be a lot of times in hauntings where people will say they witnessed the ghosts, but they were not engaging with the people who were witnessing them. It was like they were doing exactly what they were doing at the time in the past. And so it seems to be more of, yeah, it's just like a replay in time. Whereas the other types of hauntings are when they're looking at you and they're engaging with you and they are responding to you. That's
Intelligent hauntings.
yeah, intelligent hauntings. Thank you. So yeah, she came back after that and she was like, "You need to pour a drink." This is what I'm about to tell you. It's not. And I was like, "Oh my God." So she tells me this and I'm like sitting there like, really? I've been like, and she's like, I ran. And I was like, I would have already been gone. Like,
Mhm.
I'd been in the car driving away. I'd be like, get in the car, I'm leaving. I'm not staying. Oh, but then she follows this with, so when do you want to go with me to go to, like, here, tell
I
me
don't
that
know.
story and then ask me when I'm coming. Never, because that's the stuff of nightmares. That was the craziest shit I think you've ever told me.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to, and the other thing is that we'll go to these places and sometimes we won't have any experiences at all. And these are some of the most haunted places in the country that we've been to. I've been to Missouri State Penitentiary, which they call the bloodiest 47 acres in America. And I've been there and I've had meh experiences, but I've only been once. But my mom's been there and heard growls and people getting, like, she said something about her back started to itch and they were all sitting on the floor in the dark in the dungeon and she said, "Scratch my back, hurry."
You'll begin in the
And
dungeon.
huh?
In the dungeon, you say?
Yeah, solitary dungeon, pitch black. No sunlight's ever gotten in there.
Oh my
And she
gosh.
said, well, she was like, "Scratch my back, hurry." No, to the left. And nobody had touched her back yet. Something was touching her back, but it wasn't anybody.
Oh.
At least it was nice.
Yeah, and then it growled really, really loud. And that's an audio you don't want to hear. That
Maybe it
scared
has
me.
acid reflux.
Possibly. Let's
Never
make
I don't
some
know, man.
excuses
Like,
for that demonic shit.
maybe it's just like maybe it's like, you know, like a Tim Allen ghost. It's just like, you know, I don't know. Courtney, like, and the thing is, like, it's not just when she goes on haunts either. Like, she was having stuff happen at her mom's house, and like oh my God, what was that one EVP that in like you played it for me? It was a lady talking,
She was singing.
or she was singing.
She was singing, and it was really loud.
Yeah, like Courtney had gone over to stay with her mom and her sister, and they're like hanging out, and like you were recording stuff, and yeah, you just
What?
caught like some woman's voice, and then you also saw her too.
Yeah. Yeah. She hasn't been having a lot of experiences ever since I guess you would call me an exorcist now that you think about it. My sister called me one day in tears and she said, "I really, really need you to come and help me because there's something in this house." I was staying with them for a little bit and she said, "There's something in the house and I'm not going back in until you come and help." And I got there and it was like the air was musty and it wasn't moving. And the room was almost like a greenish color. It was weird. I did not like it. And I got my K2 meter out and it didn't want to communicate with me at first. And then I started trying to bless the house and it started reacting, like going off all the way to the red.
Oh.
And I said, "Oh, do you not like when I talk about, this or talk about that? You don't like when I bring up Jesus? You don't like God? You don't like any of that talk?" And it was furious with me. And I got pissed. And I was like, "Go ahead and show yourself." And my sister's sitting there, kind of hunkered over in the chair in tears. And I'm like, "Go ahead and come around the corner. I'll whip your ass. I don't care." And,
Best exorcism ever.
I know, where I was like, "I'll whip your ass."
Nobody
And,
fucks with Courtney.
Nobody. And then something happens and then I cry. But whatever it was, it left and it has never come back. So that's something else I'll give people, any listeners that you guys have. If you do have something going on in your house, you need to claim your power. It's the biggest thing in your house. You need to walk through and say, you have no power here. You have no right here. You have to leave because I said so. Now, if that doesn't work, obviously, take different measurements, but yeah, no, I've experienced things everywhere. My girlfriend had stuff going on in her house, and I have stuff that goes on here, but I think a lot of what goes on here is, because I'm a witch too, but I feel like I just have a connection to some spirits that have, attached to me, but that's a different subject. But I don't feel intimidated at all when I go into haunting,
Just
haunted
freeloaders.
areas. Yeah, maybe that's it.
Courtney, I will say, has always been, of the two of us, she's always been a lot more fearless. Like, I've always been a coward in that sense, but whereas Courtney, like, she goes where others dare, fear to tread, like, because she's.
Which I don't know where that comes from, because as a child, I was afraid of my own shadow.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in a lot of ways, our late father, he was in the situations that we faced at our old house, like, he did a lot of that, where he got mad one night and he challenged whatever it was. And he was the one that always told us that too. He was all like, he had that old belief that man is the head of the household as God is the head of the church, which I'm like, it's not man, it's people.
To be
like,
determined.
It's us. You're the head of your household. You and your partner, this is your house. This is you are the, and so it kind of stems to the whole belief that, yeah, there's power in belief, in faith, and I don't just necessarily mean like any kind of like religious belief, but like faith in who you are, faith in your own power, and faith in the fact of where you stand, and things only have the power to that which you give them.
Yep. That's what I always tell people. But I'm trying to think. I've had people in the past have invited me out. There was one, oh my God, I'd forgotten about it. We went out to her house. She was desperate, her and her husband were, and she said, there's something in my attic. I don't know what it is. There's something in my attic. We got there, pulled the stairs down. Number one, if I have to pull stairs out of the ceiling, I already don't like this.
Yeah.
Because when you pull them, it's all like,
yeah.
It makes that creepy sound.
And Chris just talked about my fearlessness. Okay, this is a time that I lost my fearlessness very quickly. I was up the stairs and I was looking around. I couldn't see anything. And obviously it's hot up there. It's not pleasant. And I hear something right in my ear go, gotcha.
Oh, no, sir.
Yeah. And I almost fell down that ladder. I was like, nope. And I just came down and went, there's something up there. You're to be continued. And I was just like, it's one of the first investigations I ever went on. I was like,
I would have urinated myself if something was like, gotcha.
Well, Barbara said that our stepmom actually said that she had something similar happen at our old house on Flintstone. Something got in her ear and said, gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know if it was gotcha, but it was something in her ear or called her name. Gotcha. I thought, oh, okay. I thought it said it called her name.
She heard it stomp through the house. It ran through the house, got right in her ear and said, gotcha.
Which is also weird because, like, the house that we lived, nobody died in it. Like,
it was what Dad was dabbling in. No offense, Dad. I know, but I mean, it's Dad dabbled in things and didn't understand what doors he was opening.
Yeah.
He believed he could control the weather. Let's remember that.
Yeah, that's true, and he can make
parking spots.
And say so for our listeners, our father passed away a little over a month ago, but so you understand the context. But yeah, our dad he believed he could create parking spots.
He manifested parking spots.
I'm manifesting parking spots. And it was like,
I remember he was big into that whole The Secret thing.
Yeah, I have it on my table right now.
He loved that. And yeah.
I mean, I stand by that. I mean, I think you absolutely do retreat. You receive what you attract. And if you go through life a negative Nancy, that's what you're going to get. But I mean, I don't think the concept of The Secret is wrong.
Yeah, I think it's more about, like, James and I, when we watched it back in the day, and we were like, it's just more or less positive. It's like, it's positive thinking, it's positive reinforcement. It's like, if you believe you could do something, then you can make it happen. But that's all it really is. It's like, but I get what you're saying too. Like, yeah.
I just like how this one ghost is mostly just kind of a dick. Just running around stomping, all menacingly, and then when he gets to you, he's like, gotcha.
Well, I wish it could have been that way because it seemed to at some point also sort of start affecting our father to a degree because wasn't there like one night where like his eyes were like
Yeah.
And
So what?
yeah
Well, when I was little, before it happened to Dad, I wonder if it transferred to him sometimes. It's kind of crossed through my brain. I was having night terrors. I'd wake up with scratches on me. That definitely not mine. My dad came in my room one time and he said I was like making a choking sound and my eyes were black. And he prayed over whatever and it went away and it never, but I remember being even in Granny's bed and something was throwing me from side to side, from my
good.
left to my right side. Something was
My
throwing
God.
me. And I had 3 claw
He
marks.
says casually.
I
Yeah.
mean, it happens. I mean, it's an unfortunate part of that stuff. I mean, I wasn't paranormal investigating at 8 or 9 years old, but I had claw marks
Paranormal
across my
experiencing.
chest. But my dad one night, I had this habit of, I was a night owl like he was, so I'd want to get up and get on the internet. Well, we had dial-up internet, so I knew he would hear it. So I would
Mhm.
wait for him to be in bed for a while. And I had tried to get up to just go listen to some music because I just didn't want to go to sleep. He's standing in the hallway. His eyes are jet black, and he's just
Oh.
staring at me. Doesn't say anything. And I kind of backed into my room and I shut the door and I sat on my bed and I sat there for a while. And I kind of slid because my bed frame was super, super loud. So I slid off my bed, crawled to the door, and he was still standing there. I could see his feet. That was probably
Oh
20
my
minutes later.
God.
Yeah, he just stood there. And he doesn't remember it. Has no recollection of it. He never remembered ever doing that.
So can I ask though, what else was he dabbling in other than law of attraction, which I don't.
He actually was in something called the EST program, EST. Basically, it was this program where kind of like you were I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit. It was kind of like you were about teaching you accountability and your responsibility in the universe and a manifestation and things like that. But it also had, ties to some negative ties to rumored, let me say it that way, rumored negative ties to Scientology. So there's a lot of like weird stuff with that. And so he was involved in EST and the whole secret stuff. And he just went through a psychosis where he really truly believed that he had control of the weather, of parking spots. I mean, it was really what he believed. And I think that and he had crystals that he never cleansed in the house that were never cleansed to this day. And they're sitting on his dresser right now in Barbara's room. And I tried to tell him, Dad, if you don't, take care of these things, you're opening doors. That's basically what I told him. And he just never thought, oh, no, nothing can walk through without my consent. Okay, but you still have to take precautions. And he never did. So I think that's a big reason why that happened at that house.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't just that house too, but even like weird stuff happened in Hanover while they lived there.
Yes.
Including this part. So our great aunt died, and you saw her in the house.
I sure did. I went to go check on the house. She had just passed, and Granny said, "Would you mind going and stopping and checking on the house?" And this and that. And I said, "Sure." And I came in, and it was real bright sunlight, real sunny day. And I came in and looked down the hallway, and I saw our Aunt Pat leaning out of Granny's room, like almost like seeing who was there.
Our dead aunt. She's dead.
Oh,
dead aunt.
Whoa.
And then she goes back and I said, "Pat, I'm just here checking on some stuff. Okay. It's not a big deal." Well, the reason why I think she was there was something a lot of people don't know also is that, haunted objects. Granny had brought a lot of her
Issues,
her stuff in the house and then went back to Missouri. And I think Pat was just attached to those items and her energy was there. And I was like, "Don't worry about it. I'm just checking on the house. If you want to stay, it's fine." But yeah, no, I saw her. And then as soon as Dad and Barbara moved in, shit started happening. So I think something was attached to Dad, to be honest.
Yeah. I thought so too for a while, and it got to the point where he thought it was as well. But I don't know. And then, of course, the other thing too was, and I'm is our Aunt Pat, her son, our cousin Brian. It was kind of interesting today because as I mentioned earlier, our father passed away, and yesterday I acquired a lot of photo albums and a lot of pictures and just memorabilia, or just what's one keepsakes. And I've been going through them all, and of course, a lot of pictures I found of our cousin Brian. And my son, my eldest son, was like, "Who's that?" And I said, "That was my cousin Brian. He had cerebral palsy. He was in a wheelchair all his life, but he was wonderful. And, he and I were really close for a long time. But what was the interesting thing about him, and I guess I could almost say that he's the reason I've been always interested in the paranormal, because he had a friend that he talked to that nobody saw. And I witnessed this. We all witnessed this over the years. He would respond, but he would always try to be very kind of like cautious, like, he wouldn't engage. He'd be like, okay.
He was worried that we would judge him.
Yeah. Or something.
Mhm.
And I think for the longest time, a lot of us thought that maybe it was an imaginary friend or something like that, until his father, my uncle, was, and I remember this story. He would go and sit with my cousin at night and talk with him on his bed. And I remember seeing this when we'd go and spend the night and stay there. They lived in Missouri, and our great uncle, would sit there and he would talk to our cousin and chit chat, like kind of like a tradition. It was nice.
Mhm.
They were close. And I guess, what was it? Like one night he just kind of finally decided to ask. He's like, "Who are you talking to this whole time?" And here's the thing: our cousin, because of cerebral palsy, he had a bit of a speech impediment, like of how he spoke. And
Yeah.
suddenly, out of the darkness, this very clear, educated voice just said, "He's talking to me."
Oh.
Oh, well, glad that clears that up.
Do you have a name?
He did have a name, actually. And here was the thing: of all of us, the only person that ever finally just got the nerve to just full on engage our cousin about this was our stepmother. She's just like, "Who are you talking to?" And I don't know. I have to ask her now. What did he say? Like, Harry.
His name's Harry.
Oh.
His name was Harry. And then when Brian felt comfortable with our stepmother, all kinds of stuff started coming out.
Barbara has that effect on people. Yeah, she sat with him and she said, "Do you mind me asking who you're talking to?" And he smiled and said, "It's my friend Harry." And she said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Have you seen your mom lately?" And he said, "Not as much." He said, "She can't come to and see me as much now." And that's something else that I think a lot of people kind of, ever since Dad passed, I've talked to him several times since he passed, but I think that they gradually they still will come visit. I don't think they'll come visit as much just because they have a lot going on and we don't know what that is, but he told Barbara all about it. And then that time there used to be, so we all used to hang out in the dining room. We never hung out in the living room really ever.
Really?
We would sit at the table there in the kitchen and watch that little TV.
Oh, yeah,
all
I
just
remember that.
Talk and, whatever. And there was a hallway that ran and the carpet was so thick and like plush, you couldn't hear anything. And he was in his wheelchair and he goes into that hallway and there was a bathroom down there. Well, I needed to go to the restroom. He wasn't down there. He had somehow gotten up a couple of steps into a bedroom. There was no physical way he could have done that on his own. And I was like, how in the hell did he get in that bedroom? And I asked him later, I said, "Brian, how did you get in here?" And he smiled at me real big and he's just like, "Wouldn't you like to know?"
Oh, yeah. He loved to be coy about it too. He's like, he loved the fact that, he was in the know, like, and it was fun for him. But he would talk about too, like other people he saw. Like he saw my late mother. He saw our late grandfather. They would come.
He called him Uncle Fred.
Yeah, our grandfather's name was Ed, but Brian always called him Uncle Fred. It was like a nickname. I don't know why. They too were very close. Our grandfather adored our cousin, and vice versa. Our cousin Brian loved our grandfather. In fact, I just saw one of the pictures I found today. It's Brian as a young boy, and he's in his wheelchair, and he is grinning from ear to ear. And you can see the back. It's Grandpa doing like this, and he's making Brian laugh. So those two were bosom buddies. So that doesn't surprise me. And he even said, he admitted to us right after our grandfather died that he came in and checked, and he saw him. He told our father that he saw him, and then our late father also even claimed that he saw him. I was with him that night. We were sitting in the living room, and I'm sitting on the couch against the wall, and then our father is sitting in this chair that's facing the hallway, and he just covered his eyes and started crying. And he's like, he's here. And Dad, to the day he died, he said he looked down the hallway and he saw our grandfather standing there looking at him, smiling, and it not in a nefarious way, but just like. So yeah, Brian, our cousin Brian, had talked about that. My mother and our late grandfather came together, like they were together, and they were asking about me. Like,
yeah, they were pestering him because he was making a video for you, and he looked over and he goes, I'll tell him in a minute. And he looks back at the camera.
I remember that video, and I remember him doing that.
Your mom and Uncle Fred say hi.
Oh.
But they were pestering him, like, tell him.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing was something that I've had a few mediums tell me was that my grandfather, I guess, is one of my spirit guides. I'm just going to use Granny was favorited Chris, and then Grandpa favorited me. And so what was interesting was that I was at Hanover, and a friend of mine who's a medium who had never seen photos of Grandpa, had never seen anything of him before. And she's sitting in that same chair that Dad was. And she said, I was sitting on the couch, and she looked and she kind of made this weird face. And I said, are you okay? And she, oh, nothing. Just go ahead. What were you saying? I said, no, what's the matter? And she said, this man just came out of that back bedroom, and he had a white shirt that cut off here. And she said he had a tattoo on his arm, and his shirt was tucked in, and he had a goatee. And she said he just came down the hallway and looked at you and smiled and went back to that back bedroom. That was his room.
Yeah.
At the end of his life, he stayed in there just because him and Granny didn't sleep well together. Their sleeping patterns were different.
Yeah. Gran loved to, he liked to sit up and read, and Gran just wanted to go to sleep. And the other thing was that our late grandmother would love to listen to radio shows. She needed like that noise, whereas Grandpa, he wanted quiet. Now, also for our listeners, our grandfather, the tattoo that she talked about, back in Korea, he was a Korean War veteran. He had it tattooed on his arm, him and our grandmother's nicknames. He was Trippy and she was Boots. And so on his arm for his entire rest of his life, it said Trippy and Boots. And it was, I'm trying to remember the exact details, but yes. So.
Yeah. So she saw that was not something she could have known.
Mm-hmm.
And later in his life, that was the other thing too. He always wore short sleeve button-up shirts.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about your friend. Does she do this like professionally or like?
No, she doesn't like it. She hates that she has the gift, actually, because she'll see things, things that she does not want to see. Mm-hmm. She'll see, there was one time we were out at Woodson Lateral, which for your listeners is a very haunted road out in East End, Arkansas.
I've been there with Courtney's mother and Courtney. We all went out there one night and we saw this.
Yeah.
That's that might actually be the only time I could say I've physically with my own eyes have seen something that I couldn't explain.
Well, we were out there's a cemetery out there that's really creepy. And we went out there, and she started having a panic attack about something. And I said, what is the matter with you? And she said, there's a thing. And she said, let's just go get in the car. I'll tell you. And she was like crying and freaking out. And she said there was this thing that was probably about 7 feet tall, and it had horns. Oh, and And she said, I don't like that I have this gift. I don't want to make a career out of it.
Mhm.
But there was actually a group that was actually well known. They had a show on the Travel Channel a long time ago. They were called the Spirit Seekers, Arkansas Spirit Seekers, I think.
Mm.
And they had a home out in Roland, Arkansas, and they invited us out to basically do an investigation because they had many spirits that they had allowed to come home with them. And I was sitting upstairs using dowsing rods, and I had never used them before, just as yes and no questions, because they're made of copper, if anybody doesn't know what those are. And I was sitting there using them. Well, his wife is a medium. And Christina, you specifically, I think, will find this interesting. She was almost like a siren. Those people that they walk into a room that are like spiritually like super sound and like aware of their power. She had like this, she was gorgeous. And it just freaked me out. Like I just wanted to I felt so safe in her presence. And she actually came up to me in that room and she said, "You have a very, very big personality for a spirit guide." And I said, "What about him?" And or about them or whatever. I didn't know at the time. She described him perfectly. The tattoo on the arm, the goatee, everything. And the only thing and this is something it freaked me out because I wondered if my mom said anything because, pessimism. But she said all that he said was, "Don't end up like me." And at the time, I was a very, very heavy drinker. And he was an alcoholic too. And I'm talking like irresponsibly drunk constantly. And I was in college and it was stupid. And but that's something that she said, "Don't end up like me." Well, and I just instantly knew what that was about.
And our late grandfather, his alcoholism stemmed from the things that he witnessed during the Korean War. And so he struggled with that for decades. But eventually, he beat it. And unfortunately, he beat it near the end of his life, and so he only was 9 years sober when he died. But our late grandmother always talked about that was the best 9 years that she ever had with him, and they were. And I can still remember those times. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that was funny, enjoyable, made you laugh. You could just have the best conversations with. And he was an incredibly kind man, like loving. Like he genuinely he loved his family. And he was somebody that I still admire to this day because he wasn't perfect. He made a lot of bad choices, but he overcame them. So I love the idea that he watches over Courtney because, of the two of us, let's face it, she's the bad seed. I'm the good boy.
Okay.
Right.
I'm just
taunting your grandkids and having to follow them around everywhere and see the crazy crap they get into that I can't unsee.
Now, Granny used to always tell me all the time, "If you're gonna go ghost hunting, can you not bring shit back?" Which I've never had that problem because I always do blessings before I go into locations.
She said that, but then there was that one night I come back into the back in Nana's room, and you and her sitting there using some device to make, and I was like, and it wasn't you, but it was her, and I'm like, you're all like, don't do that, but now she's sitting there with you.
Okay, but do you remember? You don't remember? Dad got me this detector, and we're sitting back there using it, and he comes back there and he says, "How's it going?" And I said, "Well, I don't really like how it's like telling me my grandmother's fixing to die very, very soon," which she did not. She died several years later. But I was like,
decades.
It was, yeah. And I said, I don't remember. I was an adult, but I was sitting there looking at it, and he said, "Yeah, do you know what it does? It's really cool. It's high tech. This device can detect new ghosts and old ghosts, and it tells you the difference." And I went, "Huh?
Say what?
What do you mean?" And he said, "Yeah, if the ghost just died, it can detect that. If the ghost has been dead a really long time, it can detect that too." And I went, "You're a moron."
This ghost is a 150 vintage.
And I was like, "Dad, it's not like bread. It doesn't go stale, you dumbass." I was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "This is a gimmick." He spent $80 on that, and he told me, "I'll get you the real deal." And he never did.
You know how you can tell if they died a long time ago? It's if they're all like, "Thus thou who dieth soon within the plague." You died in the colonial times. Yes, I did it.
Yep, basically.
Yeah.
I looked at him and I went, "You're a moron."
I don't know. Yeah. Wow.
So I discovered while we were talking the best thing ever. So back to this West Virginia penitentiary. They have a website, and this website has many of the things you would expect. They do guided day tours. They do an escape room, a dungeon of horrors, the various like haunted tours you can do, but a twilight tour of the haunted penitentiary. But above all of that, princess tea. We can come have tea
What?
with your
What?
favorite princesses at West Virginia Penitentiary.
Wait, what do you mean your
Wait,
friend,
like-
like
Sign
Disney
me up
princesses?
for that.
Yeah, that's
What-
what I was thinking. Disney princesses?
What
So I
princesses?
put the link in our little chat so you can.
Are we talking about like Anastasia, like dead princesses? Like, hey, you know if Anastasia died? Well, she did, and she's here. Want to have tea with her?
Nope, not dead princesses. Just your favorite princesses.
My favorite princess is Princess Leia,
Wow.
which I would jump to have tea with
So
her.
I want to see
her
what happens
ghost.
if we go have princess tea at the.
Yeah, I'm
Haunted
scrolling
as
through this right
hell.
now. Princess Tea. Yep,
Make
It's
that make
Disney.
sense.
it's Disney. I see Tinkerbell, who is not even a princess.
What the fuck?
That is the best horror movie ever waiting to happen.
It would, wouldn't it? The princess had enough, and they start slaughtering all the princes. Um,
But
You know,
Well-
I find
why?
that really ironic that they have that sort of an event because that's really weird because there was actually a room, not that it pertains to princesses or anything, but it's just such a predatory energy in that building because there was actually there was a room called the Sugar Shack. And it was a room that they could go and like play checkers and chess and whatever.
if you see
If
a
the-
faded road at the sign of the road, it says 15 miles to the left. Shack or Sugar Shack. But sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
But they went down into this room. The guards would not go into it because there were things that took place there that they didn't really want to see. Like people giving each other sugar in certain areas.
Oh,
And some of that sugar was not consensual.
oh,
And so it was a very nasty room. And we went in there and actually MTV's it was a show. It wasn't Fear Factor. It was some sort of fear show. And they actually filmed there and they painted the walls without the prison's consent. MTV and all affiliates of MTV are not welcome back at West Virginia Penitentiary because of that.
Yeah.
well, what I love about this is so if you look up any pictures of this joint, I mean, we're talking like stereotypical Arkham Asylum looking, gothic looking penitentiary.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like it looks like just driving up to it, I am haunted as hell. So I just want to envision a little girl with her Princess Tea Party on this backdrop. This is amazing.
that is so out there too, because I'm looking at it too. It is like Escape the Pen, Dungeons of Horrors, Northwalk, Princess Tea Party. Hey there. John Wilkins was executed up on the 4th floor, but you know what little Tammy's going to be doing? She's going to be having tea with all her
Tinkerbell.
favorite princesses. Come on down, $49.95. Like,
Basically.
what? That is just all of it. Like, what the
I'm
hell?
just imagining like all these princesses sitting around in this dank, dark dungeon in their bright little princess dresses having tea.
Book now, ages 12 and under, 13, and well, it's a house of horrors. And yeah,
So-
and it's in Disney font, but it says Princess Tea. What?
It's amazing, is what it is.
You would think that. What were we going to say, Christina?
Oh, I was just wondering if you heard the rest of the story that Courtney was telling about MTV painting the
Oh, yeah.
room and all that. You
I'm glad that they're
guys
not welcome
totally
back there.
derailed it.
Sorry. I'm glad they're not welcome back there. That's
What was it called? MTV Scare Tactics or something?
Oh yes, I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I remember that. I think.
Yeah, scare tactics. Anyway, they painted the walls to like looked like to freak people out, to look like shadows and stuff, and that was without the prison's consent. They were pissed.
I would be
I mean, I'm
pissed.
talking pissed.
I would be pissed.
But that room, I never caught anything. But the only thing that happened was I was feeling something doing this to my hair, like playing with it, lifting. And again, predatory energy, tons of rape, tons of assault, murders, name it. It was bad. Another thing that I always, when we got there, it was the first room I wanted to go to, but the facility's so big. At Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, there was actually a patient there that he was really sweet. He had like the mentality of probably 8 to 10-year-old. But he liked to draw, and he would do paintings and stuff for like the workers there. And there were these 2 patients that would torment him pretty regularly. And this one particular day in this room, they were wrapping a sheet around his neck and threw it over a pipe and would pull him off the ground and hang him just to where he'd pass out. And then he'd drop.
Bastards.
And then, yeah, they did that to him for a while. And then they took a bed frame and put the frame's leg on his temple and bounced on it until it killed him.
Oh my God.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. That.
And his name is Timmy. And we took our sensory stuff in there because I wanted to connect with him. He ended up saying something like, I want to go home or something like that. I mean, we didn't get a lot out of him, but yeah, that's a room a lot of people at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum will go to. But there were a group of girls, real young girls, that were there, and they thought it was a game, but they were following us because they could see we were taking it seriously. And we were in the children's ward, which is already creepy enough because there's this humanoid thing that will crawl up on the fucking ceiling and like do this weird crawl thing.
No.
And I believe Portals to Hell caught it, or I can't remember what group caught it, but you can see something crawling.
Oh.
And
No.
we're in this, and I'll send you pictures of that, but we were standing there and I said, girls, you got to take this kind of stuff seriously because you don't know what you're going to deal with. And there was this room full of toys. People that would come and investigate would bring toys. And I hear this doll go off. As I'm telling them this, it goes, hi, want to play with me?
Ugh.
And I said, example of bullshit we don't want to deal with. That. And I just left. I was like, bye. And I was like, not doing it.
The way you said that just made me think of Chucky. Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play? No.
Yeah, that's how that doll said it. So
That's another like just I hear any toy talking, it's out. It's done. That happened here once at the house. We had just moved into this house and I was it was in the middle of the night and suddenly I hear somebody talking and I'm like, what the hell is that? And Katie, my wife, is just sound asleep, so I get up and I am going down this hallway and I hear it go off again, and instantly I'm like, I know what that is. That's a toy. Wait, why is the toy going off? Oh God.
Oh God.
And during the time, it was okay. It was in the toy box, and I guess there was a toy box that we used to have in there, and stuff was just piled on now on top of it. Now it's actually my eldest son's room, but at the time it was sort of like the playroom because all 3 of my boys were sharing the room together when my eldest son was a lot smaller. And yeah, I think just some toys that shifted or that sort of thing, and so it was hitting the button.
And now it's his problem.
No, it's
Yeah,
gone.
exactly.
Because I threw it in the trash that night. Because that's the thing. It's like the minute I'm woken up and a toy's talking, I don't care if there's a good reason or not. It's out. And I've told this to people during birthday parties. We should get your son. Don't get him anything that talks. Because the first time it wakes me up in the middle of the night, it's gone.
well, there was a piano that I had that when it would was ready to turn itself off, it would go
Oh, I remember that thing.
and we took the batteries out, it still did it.
And
It did it everywhere. It did it at Flintstone, it did it at Hanover, and Granny and Dad, They all watched it go off, and there were no batteries in it.
Now, I will tell you that stems back to the story I told during our one episode where, she's a little girl and, we gave her toys. She got toys with all kinds of things. And one of them was a toy phone where you'd push the buttons and it would make that tone. And that I will say right now, that was one of the most, I couldn't explain that. I was 13, and one of those nights, our father, he's off on a gig, just me and her mom and her. And I'm in my back bedroom, and suddenly and once again, if you've watched this episode, this is what I talk about. I hear my stepmother scream my name, and I go running in there, and she is changing Courtney, because Courtney was little. She's like 2. Or actually she's like 1.5, maybe 2. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, she startled me. And so I was a little mad. Like, everything seems fine. Like, one of those things. She's like, listen. I stop, and I just hear in the living room, ding, 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 ding. And it's that phone. And it's one button being pushed. And so I look in there, and it's like in the living room. Nobody's around it, but it's just going off. And of course, I flip out and start crying. And I'm like, stop it. And then it stops, and then just starts going ding, 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 ding. And then her mother jumps up because, she sees me crying. And so her mother got mom protective mode. And she just jumps in there. She's like, shut up. And it stopped instantly. And I was all like, and of course I calmed down, and I'm like, And so my dad comes home, and I guess she told him. And so he's like, well, listen, Chris, here's what happened. By the way, this is me in accentuation. What would you call that? He didn't really sound like this, but he kind of sounded like this. Whatever.
Over exaggerating.
What she said.
It's a caricature of our dad. Dad
Thank
never
you.
sounded like that. He's a caricature. Dad never talked like this. God,
Sounded
he never
like
did that.
He sounded a little like that. Come on. Anyway, so our late father, he started to explain to me how it wasn't a ghost, that these circuits here, you see that? And so they pressed against it. And so it was just sort of, it got pressed against each other, and it was causing that circuit to go off. And I believed him, right? I'm like, oh, thank Dad. Thank you. And I felt so much better. And then years later, I'm a 20-year-old, 21, 22, and it comes up, and we're talking about it. He's like, oh yeah, I made that completely up. That was a ghost. I have no idea that there's nothing. I don't know. I was just trying to calm you down. I'm like, you lying son of a bitch.
You have to calm the kids down. I mean, thing.
I appreciated it later, but I was all like, you made it was real? And he's like, yeah, I don't know why that was doing that. I just was able to make up a bullshit lie to calm you down. And I'm like, thank you. He's like, you're welcome, son. Anything for you, sport. Here's your but I was like, oh, so it was something. He was like, yeah, it was something. Yeah.
When Dad and Barbara were actually looking for a house, there was a particular home that Barbara wanted me to see. I don't know why. I wasn't moving in with them. I didn't understand it, but she said, would you mind coming and looking at this house? I'm just curious about your opinion about it. And I went, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but okay. And it's actually in the neighborhood that Brian and Ann live in, Chris. It's nearby there.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went to go look at the house, and she said to the realtor and then to Dad, hey, I want to leave Courtney alone for a minute. I just want to kind of get her take on it. Well, the house was weird in and of itself, just because the angles of the walls and the cutout, this tiny little cutout window in the kitchen that was from the kitchen to the living room. It was literally like this big. It was weird. But I went to the back of the house, and the hallway did this zigzag thing like this. And when I got to this part, I couldn't go any further. It felt like something was physically pushing me back.
Really?
Yes. And I was like, nope, fuck that. And I was like, I kind of backed up, and I physically tried, but it felt like something was pushing me in the chest. And something was like, do not come back here. Well, then they were out in the backyard for a while, and then they came in, and we all got in the car, and she said, I don't want anybody to speak. And she turns and looks at me and she goes, so what'd you think? And I said, well, the
Wow.
house is weird. And she said, what about it's weird? And she said, I said, well, there was a point in the hallway where I got to where she goes, you couldn't go to the back of the house. And we said it at the exact same time.
Oh.
And
Wow, I
said,
did not know about this either.
yeah, ask her about it sometime. And I went, I couldn't physically do it. And then Dad goes, oh, I know I couldn't get back there either. And she goes, you walked back there just fine. I watched you do it. I couldn't.
Bless his heart.
Yeah, he wanted to be involved so bad, but we're sitting there and the exact same thing, same point in the hallway. We couldn't go past it.
So you hit the invisible wall at the end of the game map.
Kind of.
Well, what's funny though is that that's kind of true because that part of the house was recently built on. So I'm wondering.
You didn't pay for the DLC.
James, I want to love you through it. I do.
Oh,
But Dad just wanted to be included. Anything paranormal, he wanted to be included.
Well, yeah, that came to a point where it was hilarious because there was one day where I just put my arm around him like, hey man, if there was a ghost here, I would know it, and I'm glad. Be with me. It's okay. Whereas we joke with James. James has said it, he's like, if James is around, nothing's gonna happen.
And
Well,
if it does, I'm burning the house down.
I have to admit, I'm like, James and I have been best friends for 25 years. I would almost say that's the one area I have never seen him in. Whereas him face to face with that kind of a situation, it's ghost, it's unexplained, whatever. And there's always in the back of my mind when we bring this up is I've always been curious of how would he really truly react to that if like he saw something with his two eyes, because James is one of the most practical people I've ever known, which I love and respect about him.
He says naively.
What?
He says naively.
But I've always been like, how would he react? Like he saw I'm just like, would he just shut down? Like no. I don't know. So we should take James to the Ted Burn house. Just leave him there for
Remember, the last time that I went there, I took Molly, my best friend, and my nephew Ben. It was around Halloween time, and we were going to the pumpkin patch that day, and we pulled up into the driveway, and the windows are all open, like blinds.
Wait, you took Ben to Ted Burn?
He didn't go in.
I know, but I didn't know this.
Yeah, and the furniture in the living room was flipped upside down.
Oh, I remember that. I just didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. No, I think I did know this. Never mind.
And we pulled out and Benjamin goes, yeah, when we lived at Hanover, there was a demon man and he had red eyes and his head almost hit the ceiling. And I went out and I looked at him and I asked him, what are you doing out here? And he said, I live here. And he just tells this elaborate story. And I said, Benjamin, you're fucking lying. And he went, no, I'm not. This is the truth. I even told my mom. I said, no, you didn't. And we had this whole discussion about how he's a big fat liar. And then he finally goes, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how terrifying was that story? Because and I went, so it's a story. And he went, no, it's the truth, but it's a story. And I just, he wanted, again, he's a little Ricky. We call Benjamin Little Ricky. He has to be included. And
oh yeah. Needless to say, Courtney and I have had a very interesting life. I would actually say Courtney.
That was scratching the surface.
That's scratching the surface. Courtney has caught things on tape. She's caught things on audio. She has seen things that I've never seen. I'm kind of glad I have never seen, but
I also am a debunker. I do not want to believe something's going on that isn't. If there's a reason for something going on, I want to be able to debunk it. The only final story I'd ever tell, which is the most recent, Eureka Springs. If you want to really have a paranormal experience, you guys, I would go to the Crescent or the Basin Hotel, which they say is more haunted than the Crescent. And I believe the reason why is because the wiring in the building is exposed. And when you have that happen, you'll have basically spirits can feed off of it because that electricity is something they need to feed off of in order to be able to cross over and communicate on this side. So we were staying in this room and the fridge was in the closet. I don't know. They had a shelf in the closet and a little fridge. And my mom is obsessed with that Milo's low calorie tea. We have to have a gallon of it at all times. And it's in the fridge. And all of a sudden you hear this loud crash in our closet. And I open the door and the fridge has completely shifted sideways. And there's something very strong was able to do that. It was crazy. I to this day.
I never heard this. Oh my
It's
gosh.
wild. That whole fridge twisted. Now, that's the thing though, is that if you live in a home where you're having issues, have somebody come in and inspect, because if you have exposed wires, spirits can feed off of that. And as long as you guys can like get that kind of insulated, it might help.
Wow.
Again, debunking, figure out the science. There is a science to paranormal activity too.
And the thing is, no matter what you believe, you know, we stem from the unknown. We look into the unknown, and sometimes it can be explained, sometimes it can't be. I think it just comes from the fact that we're all curious.
We just want to know what's going on.
Yeah, we want to understand more. Is it ghosts? Is it just something natural? We don't know. Sometimes, yeah, it can be very easily debunked. Here in Arkansas, we have what's known as the Gurdon Light. It was totally debunked by.
I've never been there.
But it was debunked by parapsychologists. These are people who believe in the paranormal, and they were like, "It's not ghosts, it's swamp gas." You know, like that's not a ghost. Those are the type of people that yeah, it's not.
There's no point in me going.
No. I mean,
you can still go and check it out.
Yeah, you can go and see
sure?
it. I don't know. But these were parapsychologists who I met. And this one guy, he's been on Unsolved Mysteries. He has done shows, and he was like, "It's not a ghost." Those are the type of people that I tend to listen to more, because that tells you that they're not trying to see a ghost in everything. They're just trying to understand.
But remember what you said to me about something specific, that I've been to Amityville. And remember how you said people that you've talked to people that have been to Amityville?
This is the same guy, actually, that you're.
Okay.
Yeah. He
the
was
thing
like,
with that is that just because you go into a location and don't have an experience doesn't mean that the location isn't haunted. However, vice versa, there could be very plausible explanation for what goes on.
Possibly.
But I've known people that have been in it that have, that are just like me, that I want a plausible explanation for what the fuck is going on. I need to know what's going on.
Here's the thing. No matter what you believe out there, we're just, the four of us here, we're just trying to understand. We're curious. It comes naturally. We contemplate life. We contemplate death. I'm throwing religion out. This is a non-theistic view. We are just trying to understand what may happen when we die. And if you believe that nothing happens, I respect that. We respect that. But that's not something that I think we believe. We think that's something there's more. And we're curious about that. And of course, if you have any experiences that you've ever had, anything, please feel free to share it with us.
Not anything.
You know what I mean? Experiences in the paranormal. Experiences.
James is the
in
comedic
things.
relief.
James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the takeaway that I've gotten from this is, if you want to be haunted, expose all the wires in your house. And either you'll get haunted in no time,
or you'll burn the house down.
Or you'll burn the house down, and then you could do the haunting yourself. I'm a big believer in DIY.
James adds a bit of humor to it, so it's not too like, he's like me. He's easily freaked out like I am. Like we're
jokes in the worst of times.
Are not people that we would just go rushing into a haunted house, and that's okay. But
one of these days they'll take me seriously.
One of these days, no, they never will.
I have to tell you guys this before we wrap it up. In terms of humor and being scared, we were actually on a tour at the Crescent, and there was a particular worker at the time when they were building the Crescent Hotel. His name was Michael, and he fell. He fell. He was very attractive, by the way. They had a picture of him, and he fell and he died because he was flirting with girls that were like
Oh,
on the
yeah.
site and everything, and he falls to
My
his death
man.
and dies.
I
Well,
that's the way I want to go. I'd be like, how you doing?
I want to die sexily.
sexually,
goes.
exactly. So he dies, and we're on that floor. We're looking at, like, take pictures of his room door, and they said, "This is him," and they're holding up the picture. And I went, "God damn, he's fine as hell." And I'm like making jokes, and I feel something grip my thigh so hard. And I literally stopped, and the whole group were like, "Are you okay?" And I went, "Well, he didn't buy me dinner first, but it felt pretty good." And I just made this whole joke. And like, and then when we got downstairs, there's the morgue. You can be locked in the morgue. And I'm like, I love the ice cold, so stick me in there. I'm like, Chris, I have to make jokes or I won't survive.
You're like me and James. We make jokes to make light of it because it freaks us out. Like it's.
I wasn't freaked out. I just can't turn it off.
No, I'm freaked out. Like I get freaked out very easily, and so my coping mechanism is jokes. I make jokes, but man, dude, that's the way I would want to go. Our late grandfather, who we've mentioned in this podcast, he used to joke that he wanted to live to the age of 93 and then get hit in the head by a jealous husband. So,
Yeah.
well, I want to thank Courtney for my sister joining us for this fantastic episode. If you liked this episode, please like it, share it with other people. If you've ever had your own experience, please feel free to share it with us. You can actually email us.
Not just any experience. We don't want to know about your.
If you have
life.
any paranormal or strange experience, please feel free to share it with us at Little Podcast.
I get it. It may have been an amazing lunch, but it's not relevant.
I mean, unless, I don't know, it was given to you by John Belushi, who died 40 years ago.
It would be relevant.
littlepodcasthorrors@gmail.com.
Yes. And of course, we have our website of littlepodcastofhorrors.com. If you want to contribute so that we can continue to do this and eventually make a living off of this, you can actually donate to the cause. And of course, yeah, as always, yeah, hail Ashtar.
Bustin makes me feel good.
Bustin makes me feel good.
Wait, what?
It's ghost busting. We'll show you later.
Bustin. Bustin what?
Bustin makes me feel good. It's part of the theme song. You know what? That's just a reason why we need to take Christina to your house, James, and we'll have a Ghostbusters marathon. So, other than that, thanks, sis. I loved your stories.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney.
Appreciate you having me on.
We loved having you. So, and actually, Courtney has her own podcast you should listen to as well, House of Smut. It's also on Spotify.
Mhm.
If you have sensitive ears, please don't, because
Yeah.
we're pro LGBT. We talk about sex, we talk about everything, and we don't mince words. So don't listen to it if you're sensitive.
Or do.
Or do.
Or do if you want to talk about dildos. Okay. I don't know. Okay. Do it.
And with that, bye.
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 Dildos.